IELTS Writing Task 2. Certainly one of the most elegant tests I've ever seen in my life, and I guess that explains why IELTS has now dominated the language testing industries because they really do impose very stringent requirements as regards to essay. And when I say stringent requirements, I don't refer to grammar, although grammar is indeed important, but I actually refer to content, or particularly in the logical rules that govern argumentation. That explains why we have these sets of videos in order to introduce you to certain argumentative styles that will cut it for the IELTS exam, so to speak. These are styles that will certainly score you a minimum band 7. For new time visitors to this channel, for new time test takers of the IELTS, please just remember that task 2 writing is supposed to be uh, at a minimum of 250 words, and you are given 40 minutes to complete this particular task, and the remaining 20 minutes will be for task 1, which is going to be the subject of another long series of videos. We are already in video number 10, and as usual, I begin every video with a review of all that have been discussed previously. So for example, if you go back to the videos, we have labeled them accordingly in numerical fashion so that it will not be easy to determine which one is which. For video number 1 and video number 2, we talked about one-sided question prompts. And one-sided question prompts are those question prompts which only explicitly mention one side of an issue. And that being the case, then you have two options now. For video number 1, we talked about the most fundamental of them. This is the agree style, or the A1 style. And all the writer needs to do here is to posit a number of arguments to defend one's agreement to the question proposition itself. However, if the writer disagrees to this one-sided question proposition, then the writer cannot simply just disagree, but the writer will need to mention the agree argument or arguments and then kill these agree arguments. And the reason behind that is, since the question proposition is one-sided, only the agree argument is explicitly stated in the said question prompt, and therefore obligating the writer to mention these agree arguments and to kill these afterwards. All of these were explicitly cited in cardinal rule number 1, which states that if the writer agrees with a one-sided proposition, then the writer may just choose to posit a number to defend one's agreement. However, if the writer disagrees with the proposition, this is where it becomes tricky. Then the writer should not forget to kill the arguments of the agree side. The writer may successively argue a number of arguments for the disagree side, at which point the writer is now performing what we call the kill and bury style, which was first introduced in video number 5, and that is the A2 style still, although it's an added element is the bury argument, wherein the writer adds the disagree arguments. Video number 3 and number 4 were in support of video number 1 and number 2. Video number 3 sampled actual passer essays from my students in the past, and they are proof of the validity of these argumentative structures. And video number 4 talked about the frequently asked questions on the A1 and the A2 style as posited by my active students at the moment. And it was in that video that cardinal rule number 2 was introduced, which states that everything that's in the question prompts should be duly expounded, expanded, explained, and elaborated in the essay. We're now moving on to video number 6, which also is in support of video number 5, or the kill and bury style. I showed two passer essays using the kill and bury style. So all of that from video 1 to video number 6 deals with one-sided question propositions. And beginning from video 7, we now began to talk about the crossover question propositions, wherein the question prompt explicitly mentions two sides of an issue. Therefore, the reason why we call it a crossover is the there is a certain point in the essay where the writer will need to cross over to the other side of the issue, thereby raising the level of complexity. So crossover essays are indeed tough. So for example, would you like to do the A2 style for the crossover essay? The third cardinal rule has now been injected, which states that in a crossover question prompt, should the writer choose one value over the other, then the writer is mandatorily required to kill and bury the arguments of the opposing side. So remember, to kill is to mention the opposing argument first and then to come up with the arguments that kill it. And then the bury represents the arguments of the writer's own side of the issue. By video number 8, we now began talking about the B styles, and instead of talking about B1 style flat out for video number 9, I first sampled a video, an actual passer essay written by a student who used the B1 style, which is what we now call as the coexist. So, video number 10 is upon us, and we are continuing to talk about the B styles. Remember what I mentioned earlier in the previous video, video number 9, talking about how the B styles evolved. So, in class, there were really only two styles, the A1 and the A2 styles. The A2 styles, of course, is either the kill style or the kill and bury style. This was prompted by investigative questions from students who asked what if the writer can argue for both sides of the issue. That is the question that started the ball rolling, and then, of course, I had to research on it. Instinctively, it does make sense. It's possible for you to argue that both sides of the issue are indeed acceptable to you. But the question now becomes, is this acceptable for the IELTS exam? And so looking back into all the model answers, like I said, we scoured all the model answers. And indeed, we did see a number of essays that argued for both sides of the issue. So an example of that was the essay that came out just 2 weeks ago, which said that some people believe, when I say 2 weeks ago, I'm referring to February of 2019. So some people believe that an organization will become successful if there's good communication between managers and workers. So that is one side of the issue. And then this is now the crossover marker. Others, however, believe that there are more important factors that make up a successful organization. Now that is the opposing side of the issue. Therefore, there is no doubt that this question prompt is indeed a crossover question prompt, proven further by the instruction for you to discuss both views and to give your opinion. We already saw in video number 8 a sample of an essay that was written using this style. And another question prompt came out in May of 2017, which states that people should be healthy not only for themselves but for society's behalf. And then, to what extent do you agree or disagree? It's very interesting because if you notice, it's a to what extent do you agree or disagree question. But looking back into the proposition, you can actually see two sides of an issue. People should be healthy not for only for themselves. And then there is that crossover marker, but, and then you see, but for society's behalf. So there is no question that this question prompt is indeed a crossover. So the writer should discuss the need for people to be healthy for themselves, and then the need for people to be healthy for society's behalf. And of course, it's possible for you to say that people should indeed be healthy because of both reasons. That is still the B1 style. And so with the B1 style, we now introduce the concept of the coexist. So that now becomes a new cardinal rule, which states, cardinal rule number 4, that in all B styles, the writer should treat both sides of the issue in balance. It is the balance of the two sides which raises a dilemma and necessitates a problem solver. Wherein, in the B1 style, the writer argues that both sides of the issue can coexist at the same time right now. That is the B1 style. Again, please let me emphasize the cardinal rule. When you're talking of B styles, you're talking about essays where two sides of the issue are equal. And it becomes difficult to choose one and kill the other. So with these styles, then one of the options that you can do in order to solve the problem or to overcome the dilemma is to argue that both sides of the issue can apply at the same time right now. We are now going into the B2 style. So again, as raised by the students, so since the students raised the question as to whether it's possible to argue for both sides of the issue at the same time, then so that prompted an investigation, and so that led to the creation of the B1 style. And remember, we already have the A1 style, and after that is the A2 style. So with the development of the A2 style, then we have increased the students' chances of passing by a factor of double the possibilities. Now, with the introduction of the B1 style, their chances of passing now triples, therefore, because the student now has more options in order to solve the problems as posited by the question prompt. And now, as we went further, we now went into the B2 style, wherein now this time the writer has quadrupled one's chances of passing the IELTS exam because the writer now has a fourth problem solving option, which is what we call the B2 style. And so in a nutshell, the B2 style is now what we call the it depends. And therefore, when it comes to the cardinal rule stated earlier, like cardinal rule number 4, let me read that again, states that in all B styles, the writer should treat both sides of the issue in balance. It is the balance of the two sides which raises a dilemma and necessitates a problem solver, wherein in the B1 style, the writer argues that both sides of the issue can coexist at the same time right now. That is now the coexist or the B1 style. But admittedly, if you are faced with two sides of the issue, it's not always possible for you to argue that they should coexist at the same time right now. There are certain question prompts indeed wherein what you can say is both sides of the issue are actually possible, but only depending on certain circumstances. And that is now what we call the B2 style, or in layman's parlance, that's now what we call the it depends. So we can now add to our cardinal rule, which now states that in the B2 style, the writer argues that both sides of the issue can coexist. There's still that word coexist. Sorry about that. Coexist at the same time. And this is the qualifier. But only upon the implementation of certain depending circumstances. So, simplified, this is now the it depends. You can argue that both can actually work, but depending on certain circumstances. They are the it depends. Let's underline all of that. Depending on certain circumstances. So having discussed that, then we can now gather all our cardinal rules so far. Remember, these are cardinal rules, meaning they are fundamental, they are basic, they are grounded in fact, and they cannot be broken. They are essential, and they are the keys in order for you to score a minimum band 7. So don't forget, cardinal rule number 1 states if the writer agrees with a one-sided proposition, then the writer may just choose to posit a number of arguments to defend one's agreement. However, if the writer disagrees with the proposition, then she should not forget to kill the arguments of the agree sides. Cardinal rule number 2, everything that's in the question prompt should be duly expounded, expanded, explained, and elaborated in the essay. You know, this second cardinal rule appears to be an easy one, very easy to memorize, very easy to remember. But I tell you, a lot of students do break that cardinal rule, even with the knowledge of the said cardinal rule. Do not forget, please. It happens quite a lot. And cardinal rule number 3 states that in a crossover question prompt, Should the writer choose one value over the other, then the writer is mandatorily required to kill and bury the arguments of the opposing side. So cardinal rule number 1 came out in video number 1. Cardinal rule number 2 came out in video number 2. No, I think this was already in video number 4, discussing the FAQs of the A1 and the A2 style. Cardinal rule number 3 came out in video number 7 when we first discussed the crossover question prompt and discussed the kill and bury. So now you have come upon cardinal rule number 4. This first of the cardinal rules, the first bullet there came out in video number 9, last video. And now we are upon video number 10, talking of the it depends. So how does it look in an essay? So what I have here is a question prompt that appeared in the August 2016 exam, which states that some people are happy to spend the whole of their lives living in the same area. However, others prefer to live in many different areas over their lifetime. Discuss both views and give your opinion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to write the essay in front of you. I only have the bullets in front of me, and so from those bullets then I can already create an essay. This is what I do for a living, so I'm kind of used to it, guys, so please don't feel intimidated. It's just because I do this for a living. And so I will begin the essay with the introduction. So I will begin with a hook statement, which is a statement that talks about, just a brief statement that talks about the central topic of the proposition. So this central topic is all about happiness. So maybe I can say that happiness is indeed derived from the environment we find ourselves in. That's the hook statement, and then next to that is the element which we call the paraphrase. And the paraphrase is an element which merely rephrases everything that's stated in the question proposition. And so I will have a marker to segue into the paraphrase. In this slide, there is now a question as to whether or not happiness is best found in living in the same environment one grew up in, or whether one can find happiness living in different areas. So that's now the paraphrase. I'm now moving into the third element of the introduction, the forecast statement, which is defined as the scope and the limitation that the writer intends to set the parameters for the essay. And so this is the forecast statement. This writer intends to look into both sides of the issue and arrive at a logical finding. And the final element is now what we call the thesis statement, which is defined as the statement of the writer's opinion. And so I would say something like but as far as this writer is concerned, the answer to the question ultimately depends on the person himself, herself. There. All right. So that is now the it depends opinion that I intend to argue for this essay. Remember these four elements: the hook statement over there, and then the paraphrase statement over here, and then this writer intends to look at both sides of the issue. This is the forecast statement, and this is the thesis statement. All of these four elements will be discussed in a future video talking about the introductory elements. Please wait, anticipate that video. Don't forget to click subscribe, as I always keep reminding, so that you will be duly notified when the new videos come out. So for the first body paragraph, I will now talk about living in the same area. So like for example, I can say, let's just fix the formatting over there. Living in the same place does pose advantages for certain types of people. There is clearly the feeling of security brought about by one's familiarity with the same environment and interacting with the same people. Apart from this, there is the feeling of warmth and belongingness, uh, resulting from the said feelings of familiarity. And ultimately, these environments do fit perfectly well with people who value stability and do not wish to entertain the lack of security brought about by uh, being in an entirely new setting. So if you notice for that particular paragraph, that's the first body paragraph, what I cited here is that these environments do fit perfectly well with people who value stability. And so that is really the topic sentence, and that is the first depending condition, matching the thesis statement, which states that this ultimately depends on the person himself or herself. Let's now move on to the kind of person who would find living in other places advantageous. So, on the other hand, there's my crossover marker. On the other hand, there are indeed people who are filled with a sense of adventure. These are people who value the excitement of meeting new personalities throughout their life and expanding one's personal network. Okay, network there. These people enjoy the experience of the new, such as in witnessing new cultures, new sights there, new foods, and the like. Primarily, it is the outgoing and adventurous types of people who would enjoy living in different places in the course of their lives there. So the topic sentence here is over here right at the end. It's the outgoing and adventurous types of people who would enjoy living in different places in the course of their lives. So as you can see, what we have shown is that both sides of the issue are actually possible, but depending on the type of person we're talking about. So they can coexist at the same time, but depending on the type of person. So now, having answered that question, then we can now conclude the essay by saying, therefore, to conclude, the answer to the intriguing question as to whether it would be advisable to stay in one place or to brave living in different places in one's life does indicate that both are indeed advantageous. Sorry about the spelling, advantageous and acceptable, but ultimately depending on the person's intrinsic traits and personalities. There you go. So in the conclusion, of course, you will have to depend. You'll have to mention that word depending on, just to highlight the depending circumstance that you have argued throughout the essay. There you go. So for those of you who would like to maybe take a shot of the entire thing, maybe we can have the first few paragraphs there first. So there's the proposition over there, and There's your introduction over here, and this is your first body paragraph over here. And then we now cross over to the second body paragraph over here, and then we now conclude accordingly. That is now the it depends style. So guys, just as a reminder, the IELTS writing test does impose certain problem solving strategies. You cannot learn these on your own. You'll have to be acquainted on it, and that is the purpose of this channel. These strategies are essential. You cannot apply, you cannot choose none of these strategies and hope to score a minimum band 7. So they are cutting edge, they are highly effective, and they are proven. For the next video, video number 11, I will be displaying some essays that use the coexist and the it depends and successively scored a band 7 minimum. Of course, I am sure that you have previously uh, not heard of these strategies, and that is because all of these strategies are really a product of investigation and research by this teacher who has had years of training students in class, and therefore the strategies are revelatory. They finally reveal the secrets that the IELTS writing test has been hiding all along. That being said, guys, I hope to see you in video number 11. And if there are any questions, please don't forget to just posit your questions in the comments box below. And do just please click subscribe so that you will be duly alerted to the new videos that will come out. The next video, like I said, will be talking about proven actual passer essays that use the B1 and the B2 style. Thanks, everyone.